Ladies and gentlemen, with the permission of the chair, now I would like to welcome Dr. Van Wood on the dais. And it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Van Wood, Professor of Marketing School of Business, Virginia, Commonwealth University, Richmond, USA. He is a specialist in international business with over 30 years of experience in global marketing and trade. He has produced and moderated 14 international business forums, each with a unique international business. Now I welcome him up on the stage for the keynote address.
It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Van Wood. I'm professor of marketing. My specialty is international marketing and in particular global business. And I must admit, the first time I've been to northern India. I've come to India many times, but always South India, always in Bangalore or Chennai. So to come to North India has always been kind of a dream of mine. I've heard about its beauty and about its people, and now to have the chance to experience it is truly my pleasure. So to begin with, let me thank you all for having me here. This is a true blessing for me. Thank you. Today, I wanted to talk to you about two things that I spend a lot of time with. Two things that I call the super stories of our time. You know, think about that term, super story. It's the story that envelops a good part of all our lives. It's the story that's changing what we are and how we work and how we interact with each other. These two stories are related to each other, okay? And I do think of them as super stories. One is globalization and one is sustainability. But before I begin my little, and it'll be brief, my little chat with you, my little talk, I wanted to see if we can show a quick video here that is it's produced by it's been choreographed by a colleague of mine who's from Northern Europe, from Sweden, Hans Rawlings. It's called 200 Countries, 200 Years, 4 Minutes. It sets the stage for these super stories, and I think you'll find it really, truly relates to what your academy is all about. So if we could dim the lights and see if it works.
Life expectancy from 25 years to 75 years. And down here, an axis for wealth, income. Visualization is right at the heart of my own work too. I teach global health. And I know having the data is not enough. I have to show it in ways people both enjoy and understand. Now, I'm going to try something I've never done before. Animating the data in real space, with a bit of technical assistance from the crew. So, here we go. First, an axis for health. Life expectancy, from 25 years to 75 years. And down here, an axis for wealth, income per person, $400,000, $4,000, and $40,000. So down here is poor and sick, and up here is rich and healthy. Now, I'm going to show you the world 200 years ago, in 1810. Here come all the countries. Europe brown, Asia red, Middle East green, Africa south of Sahara blue, and the Americas yellow. And the size of the country bubbles show the size of the population. And in 1810, it was pretty crowded down there, wasn't it? All countries were sick and poor. Life expectancy were below 40 in all countries. And only the UK and the Netherlands were slightly better off, but not much. And now, why start the world? The Industrial Revolution makes countries in Europe and elsewhere move away from the rest. But the colonized countries in Asia and Africa, they are stuck down there. And eventually, the Western countries get healthier and healthier. And now we slow down to show the impact of the First World War and the Spanish flu epidemic. What a catastrophe! And now I speed up through the 1920s and the 1930s. And in spite of the Great Depression, Western countries forge on towards greater wealth and health. Japan and some others try to follow, but most countries stay down here. Now, after the tragedies of the Second World War, we stop a bit to look at the world in 1948. 1948 was a great year. The war was over, Sweden topped the medal table at the Winter Olympics, and I was born. But the differences between the countries of the world was wider than ever. United States was in the front, Japan was catching up. Brazil was way behind, Iran was getting a little richer from oil, but still had short lives. And the Asian giants, China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Indonesia, they were still poor and sick down here. But look what is about to happen. Here we go again. In my lifetime, former colonies gained independence, and then finally they started to get healthier and healthier and healthier. And in the 1970s, then countries in Asia and Latin America started to catch up with the Western countries. They became the emerging economies. Some in Africa follows. Some Africans were stuck in civil war and others hit by HIV. And now we can see the world today in the most up-to-date statistics. Most people today live in the middle, but there are huge differences at the same time between the best of countries and the worst of countries. And there are also huge inequalities within countries. These bubbles show country averages, but I can split them. Take China, I can split it into provinces. There goes Shanghai. It has the same wealth and health as Italy today. And there is the poor inland province Guizhou. It is like Pakistan. And if I split it further, the rural parts are like Ghana in Africa.
And yet, despite the enormous disparities today, we have seen 200 years of remarkable progress. That huge historical gap between the West and the rest is now closing. We have become an entirely new converging world. And I see a clear trend into the future. With aid, trade, green technology and peace, it's fully possible that everyone can make it to the healthy, wealthy corner.
Well, what you just seen in the last few minutes is a story of 200 countries shown over 200 years and beyond. It involved plotting of 120,000 numbers. Pretty neat, huh?
So I wanted to start with that video. I know it, you can see the next slide. You want to put it on the, there we go. Show the down one, repeat. There's the, and I'll make these available. This is the video that you can pull out of. It's posted on YouTube. And I think it's really a marvelous use of technology to kind of explain the world that's really quite complex, but to make it quite parsimonious. Hans Rawlings, I said, a colleague of mine in Sweden, has taken 200 countries over 200 years in 4 minutes and said, here's how we've got. But his message is very, very positive. It's much like your message here at the Akal Academy, that we can all in this world make it to that upper quadrant where we are healthy and we are wealthy, okay? Where we're healthy and we're wealthy. And I don't mean wealth in the sense of greedy wealth or whatever. I mean wealth in terms of each individual having the ability to meet their own potential, which I think is pretty amazing. And the thing I want you to that I really like about this video is the last words that he said. He said, we can all get to that upper quadrant if 4 things happen. One was aid, and that's the wealthy countries helping the poorer ones, and that's something that all countries deal with all the time. The other was peace, and that's a real, difficult one, but I think the world, if you look at it, and there are statistics that say that we are getting to be a more peaceful world. Looking at the daily news, you may not believe that, but it truly is true. If you compare what we were 100 or 200 years ago as a human society, it is a much more peaceful world today with less violence. So I believe that's happening. The other 2 are really my theme. He says with aid, peace, trade, and green technology. And it's the green technology and the trade that subsume the 2 super stories of our time, I think, that are going to move us up into that quadrant and achieve the mission that I clearly heard in the beginning speakers today, that is all about your academy here. and the marvelous 121 schools that you have. So let's start with globalization. That's a big term, been around for a while now. What is globalization? Well, here's one view of it. This is a view taken from a satellite. It is our Earth. It's all we've got right now. There are those who claim that someday mankind will venture out to another planet, or what they call, perhaps Mars, or perhaps what they call the Goldilocks planets, where it's not too hot and not too cold, just right for us. That's going to be a long time away. This is what we have right now. And as you'll see, when we move from globalization to sustainability, it's absolutely critical that we take care of this. This is our home. This is all we have. Another view, it's a little bit dark here for you, I know, but this is a view, it's a satellite composite view. If it wasn't so light, you could see it better, but I'll go over it very quickly. This is a view of where the lights are on at night, okay? Where are the lights on? And that's a view of globalization, because where the lights are on is where we're moving up to that upper quadrant where wealth and health occur. And as you can see it, the lights over here in this far corner, those are of my country, United States, and you can see most of the people live from the Mississippi east. That's the river there. That's why it's lit up. The big spaces, by the way, that are dark there, those are all America's national parks. Thank you, President Teddy Roosevelt, who gave us those. That's why it's dark. It's preserved for all time for our people to enjoy it. If you move over to Europe, you can see Western Europe is quite lit up. It gets dark as you move into Russia. Look at India. India is lit up. Things have changed in India dramatically. China, the eastern coast, it's moving inland as the secondary and tertiary cities develop. The lights are being turned on. One of the things you can barely see probably here, it looks like it's an island floating, but it's not. That's the Korean Peninsula. Okay, that's South Korea. Why if you look to the top of it, it's dark because that's North Korea. North Korea is not involved at all in the globalized business or globalized world, and the lights are turned off. There's some other very interesting things you can see. This is South America down here. This is Brazil and Sao Paulo. That's Argentina. Where the lights are turned on, development is happening. Wealth is being created. Health is being created. Right here, by the way, this light right out here in the Caribbean, that one bright one right there, that's Puerto Rico. That's an American protectorate, highly developed, probably the wealthiest place in Latin America. Another example of that is, next slide, this is my country again, the United States. It goes down into Mexico. It's better lights. As like I say, I'll make these slides available. I think they're kind of profound. When you talk about something like globalization as a concept, sometimes you can visualize it if you have a picture of the globe and where the lights are on. But let's bring it down a little bit closer to what we all deal with. So what is globalization? It's a process that intensifies the interaction and integration among cultures, politics, the business world, and intellectual elements of our world. It has brought us all closer together. It's allowed me to come here. It's allowed many of you to see America and to see other parts of the world. It wasn't always this way. In fact, only recently has this really explosion that we call globalization really occurred. So globalization is the transition from the old super story of our time to the new super story. And it's just one way of depicting our world. I have no claim to have a handle on total truth, believe me, but it helped me explain our world. The old super story of our time was capitalism versus a central planning system. It was a system where the market forces versus forces that were centrally planned, where there was a system based on the Soviet Union's way of looking at things versus those that were primarily projected by America. That came to an end in 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down. Everything changed. That old super story that we were locked into, we, the human race, were locked into for some say 75 years, from the Bolshevik Revolution in 1918 to 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down. That was the story that guided us. And what happened during that time was that there were tremendous amounts of people, societies, and countries that were left out. They were behind one wall or another. As Thomas Friedman says, when the wall came down, the earth became flat. That's his famous book, if you know Thomas Friedman, the New York Times writer whose famous book, The World is Flat, that's sort of his central theme. And we moved into a multipolar world from 1989 with the US on top. That only lasted during the Clinton administrations because things started to change rapidly. Wealth started to be created, and we moved into a multipolar world where there were many points of power, where we saw the rise of many different states. We went from a G8, which was a global 8, those are the Western countries that were the rich ones that ruled for the last 500 years, to the G20, which is including India and China and the big emerging markets, to what we call the G0 now, where anybody can be a player. Any country can make a contribution. Knowledge can be shared anywhere at any time, mainly because of a big thing that we're going to be talking about later on in this conference, the internet explosion, the sharing of information, etc. Let me just give you some quick facts about what globalization, where we are today. This has been a 2-decade, probably 25 years phenomenon right now. 2 billion people have entered the world of markets and trade, driven primarily by Western capital flowing to Asia and across the globe. The global economy has grown at 42% in the last 10 years. There's no country in the world that's near that, 42%. Emerging markets account for nearly half of that growth. That's India, China, Brazil, Turkey, Russia, etc. And they now account for over 40% of the world's economy. That is 25 years old. Before then, we never saw that. In 1981, 40% of the people lived on $1 a day or less in the world. In 2015, that's expected to drop to 12%. We're winning the battle of moving people up to that quadrant of wealth and health. China has lifted over 400 million people out of poverty. Poverty is falling in over 80% of the world's population, and the rise of productivity and economies is unprecedented in China, India, Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, and the list goes on and on. It is truly a super story of our time. These are the big emerging markets that are, next slide. Big emerging markets that we watch. They are China, India, Brazil, Russia, and Mexico. They will account for the most of the growth and most of the wealth in the coming 21st century. Most of you young people out there, you're going to see a wave that's created. If you learn to ride this and become educated on it, you'll have opportunities that would swamp anything that your parents or grandparents might have had. Next slide. Let me give you some quick fun factoids here. Today, the tallest buildings are now in Taipei, soon to be Dubai. It's actually just completed, it is Dubai. The richest man is Mexican. It used to be the United States. The largest publicly traded company is Chinese. The largest planes are built in the Ukraine and Russia. The leading oil refineries is in India. The largest factories are in China. London's the leading financial center. The United Arab Emirates have the richest endowed investment fund. The largest Ferris wheel is in Singapore. The world's #1 casino is in Macau. The largest movie industry is in Bollywood. India produces over 4,000 movies a year. Hollywood produces 400. No comparison. The world's largest malls in China. But the point being is that 10 years ago, all of these were in the United States. They're no longer in my country. It's growing by leaps and bounds outside. 100 years ago, we had a collection of European nations in charge. That actually started a long time ago, almost 500 years ago. Then came the bipolar Cold War period where we were locked into that old super story. Then came the American unipolar period for about 8 years when the Clinton administration was here. That quickly went away. We moved into globalization 2.0, and now that's where we are. And the rest, which is India, China, Brazil, the rest is rising, and they're waiting for no one. It is a phenomenal opportunity. And you know, as a business person, I don't see this as being a bad thing at all. It's not about India versus the US or the US versus China or China versus India or all of them versus Europe. The game is educated people that form value chains that stretch around the world to create the highest quality products and services at the lowest possible price. They win. Educated people can catch that wave and see their future grow up into that upper quadrant. Next slide. So all this brings about the second big story of our time, sustainability. The demand by globalization on resources around the world with that growth we've seen of wealth has been unprecedented. And what does that mean? We need more oil, more coal, more uranium, more minerals around the world as never before. And that's put a demand on this earth, on that home of ours, as we've never seen before. What sustainability means is that, in a nutshell, it means that the current generation is able to maintain and create a better lifestyle for themselves, but leave it so that their children also have an opportunity to reach their potential. That's what sustainability is. And we have to get this together. We have to crack this code in order to really be able to ride the wave of globalization, create that quadrant where we all have some health and wealth, without destroying our planet. That's the big challenge, the second super story of our time. Now, next slide. I wanted to show you a slide here. I work with an NGO. It's called Environic Foundation International. It's based out of in the United States. And one of the ways globalization is they've created this matrix. Think of it as a 5 by 5 matrix, so there's 25 doors. You can walk through every one of those doors and learn something about our world and the challenges and opportunities related to sustainability that exist. We have issues with mountains, oceans, health, human settlement, justice and peace, energy, education. Now, this is something that's really quite profound, I think, and we actually teach classes on this, but I want you to see it. We have a handle on what the issues are in sustainability and how we actually meet those challenges of it. But more than just meeting the challenges of it, we can actually do good, make our world better, and do well, create wealth from it. Let me just show you a little bit about these global pressures and why it's so important. Global population will increase from today's 7 billion to 9 billion by 2040. We are going to increase. Some say that by the end of the century, there'll be 17 billion people on this earth. That's difficult to conceive of. The use of resources and materials our use of our materials and resources need to be improved by 4 to 10-fold in order to support that population. Without education, we're not going to do that. Innovation on a massive scale is required from all sectors of our societies. For the first time in history, more than 50% of the world's population live in urban areas. By 2050, 70% will live in urban areas. What does that mean? Repeat. What's the problem with urbanization? Well, there's some good news and bad news. The good news is it allows the earth to heal itself. The bad news is that it brings people together such that non-communicable diseases are more readily apparent. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, chronic respiratory diseases, etc. It affects our water. It gives us unhealthy diets. It has it creates physical inactivity. There's harmful use of tobacco and alcohol. There's disease outbreaks. There's environmental degradation. There's violence and injury, and the list goes on. Globalization has created some bad things as well as good things. Water usage. A mere 12% of the world's population uses 85% of the water. It's a big deal here in India, I know. 20% of the world's inhabitants lack access to sufficient water, which is defined as 20 liters per day. The average person in the US and Europe uses 600 liters per day. The average person in India and China barely gets the 20 liters we need. Unclean water. Next slide. What does it mean? 400 million people in the world today have no access to clean, safe water. 1.4 million people that lack water every day find themselves in dire straits. Second biggest killer of children in the world is the lack of fresh water. The cost is significant. We can take care of this problem by using globalization and its forces. Urban water and human settlement. The big question for 2030 is, will we be sustainable? Will we be able to contain our population and its health when there are 5 billion people living in cities? Excellent. Another big issue is antimicrobial resistance. Illnesses such as diarrhea, respiratory infection, meningitis, sexually transmitted diseases are among those that fit into this category and the most prevalent and growing because of globalization and the movement of people around the world. Airlines liberalization. Carriers, and I'm guilty of this, I fly all over the world, carriers of illnesses such as swine flu, measles, tuberculosis can easily spread in this era of globalization. Eco-services, another big term in terms of the second super story, globalization of our time. We the humans on this planet, benefit enormously from the resources and the processes that we use those resources. They're called ecosystem services, and they include products like clean drinking water and how we decompose our waste and a whole series of things. Take a look at this slide here. The next slide. This is a very detailed slide, so I'll let you look at it in more leisure at your time when you have a chance to review these slides. But this is what's threatened by globalization and by the spread of this creation of wealth. 75% of the generic diversity of agriculture crops has been lost. 75% of the world's fisheries are fully or over exploited. Up to 70% of the world's known species risk extinction as global temperatures rise to more than 3.5%. You know, if this global warming thing is really true, and you look at what's happening, there's some really interesting sites on the web that you can say, what happens is that if we raise 1 degree, or 2 degrees, or 3 degrees, push it up to about 6 degrees in terms of global warming of our temperatures around the world, and watch what happens in America. New York disappears. Florida is gone. In this part of the world, Bangladesh is gone. And 150 plus million people stream into India. Could be a total disaster if something isn't recognized by this. More to the point, next slide, you take away, you let this ecological damage continue, and you lose the pollinators, you lose the bees. And this is just one example. Is that a big deal? Well, we lose more than just honey if we lose the bees. You lose the flowers are gone, apples, peaches, pears are gone, raspberries, blueberries, milk is gone, summer watermelon is gone, Halloween pumpkins are gone, almonds are gone. We probably won't starve, but our lives won't be as rich. What we eat, what we wear, cotton and flax, will be limited, and our lives will be dictated by the wind, because that's all that will spread this pollen and give us all this wealth. Globalization, next slide. Globalization is a plus in dealing with all this, okay? I really believe this. It allows humanity to move and quickly to adequately deal with disaster situation. It allows our modern world to detect and warn people of oncoming disasters. Rapid global travel has enabled the international community to respond more quickly to a lot of these maladies. Increased media attention, where you get news immediately, directs people's attentions to how we should gear our energies, make things right. It's not about just being right, it's about being smart. It's about being educated about these things, that you can actually solve some of these problems. Globalization also has a good deal of negative consequences. It involves many consequences that have resulted in these disasters, or coming disasters that I've talked about. Increased urbanization drastically increases the vulnerability of areas to disasters. Increased interdependence and connectedness of the global community allows for devastating effects to quickly ripple through our globe. Globalization and sustainability. There are two interrelated constructs. By the way, this globalization is not going away. You know, you may wish it away and whatnot, but I know India is not going away from it. They've seen the wealth creation. They've seen what might be. They've seen the standard of living grow. They've seen that their children can have a super better life than what was in the past. China is the same way. It's not going away. But the sustainability side says you've got to take care of the earth too. There are two interrelated constructs that represent, I think, and other observers I know think so, the super stories of our time. They portend possible nobility of the human endeavor. We can be better. Or they portend degradation and disaster for the human endeavor. I personally think they represent a tremendous opportunity. Let me give you one example, okay? One quick example. This is a product called Evotherm. What it is a product created by a company in my town, one of our Fortune 500 companies, that because they make packaging and have a chemical division, they found out recently that one of their literally serendipitous breakthroughs was a product that was used, if you can see this, a product that's used for making roads. It's an asphalt, but it has a couple of characteristics. One, it's price competitive with all other competitors. They produce it at the same cost. It's quality competitive. It lasts just as long as other competitors, but it has two other characteristics. It only requires 50% of the heat to get it ready to move onto the roads, so you're not heating up your world. The climate changes that are come out because of global warming are decreased. And secondly, it dampens down the sound of traveling over it by 50%. Less sound, a more pleasant world, if you will. This company took this product from 0 sales to $1 billion in sales in 3 years because they incorporated sustainability into their strategic dimensions. Less heat, less sound, equal in quality, smart, and good. They are doing good and they're doing well. That's the way we tackle these problems. You incorporate the realities of these 2 super stories into what we educate our young people about. They become part of their lives. We solve our problems. We move on. We actually can achieve what Hans Rosling said in that first video, that first scenario there, of moving into that quadrant where health and wealth are possible for everyone on this planet. I really believe that. I spent a lot of time traveling the world and trying to work with companies and societies and organizations such as yours to make that happen. I'm truly an optimist. And what I've seen here in India in particular makes me even more so. You have a fabulous country. You have an unbelievable future. You belong in the 21st century of that wealth and health creation. And I wish you all the best in that. Thank you for having me.